such a teacher, and I've learned so much in the last year. Thank you. Here's my question. I have a friend who's schizophrenic and locked up and in prison for something he had done. And literally, from my perspective, from doctors' perspectives, out of his mind, I'm able to hear what you're saying and discern and make choices. My question is, and I've thought about this a lot this week, to ask you, what about those individuals that are perceived to be mentally, emotionally incapable of making decisions to what feels good and what does not? And what I got from earlier is to hold him in the space of light and love and whole and complete from listening to you today. Meanwhile, he's got his life, and how can I'll just leave it right at that.
The most difficult thing to try to do, no one ever does a very good job of it, but it's a very difficult thing to try to do, is to don someone else's perspective. In other words, almost everyone tries to superimpose how they would feel in a given situation. And of course, when you think about his lack of freedom or the way he's perceived, it would be intolerable to you, but it's not as intolerable to him as it is to you. In other words, let's see if we can come around this from a different direction. The analogy that we use most often is, imagine that you've traveled to an underdeveloped, by your standards, country where the lifestyle is very different from your own. And you cannot leave behind your perspective of how life could be, because you've been living with modern conveniences and services and cleanliness and abundance, and to step into a world that is far different from that would be startling to you. So when you view the people who live there, your perspective of their life is very different than their perspective of their life. And they are often much happier in their life than you would be in their life. And often, and this is the part we really want you to hear, they're often happier in their life than you are in your own life. In other words, because we said earlier, if your desire is here and your vibration is here, you're uncomfortable. If your desire is here and your vibration is here, you're not uncomfortable. Now, let's begin, because there are a lot of things rumbling in this question, but let's begin with the concept of schizophrenia to begin with. There are a lot of versions of what you call dementia or disorder or out of your mind, but a very common thread in all of them is that when life has caused you to become something and you haven't figured out how to let it be, there is discord within you that you almost can't bear. And often a sort of other perspective is born in this. It's like who you are keeps calling you forth, and if there is a very resistant personality that won't allow you to go, often another personality emerges to go. Does that make sense to you? In other words, your desire to be free is so powerful. And if you are in an environment where you perceive that your freedom is being quelled or disallowed, that desire to be free just keeps spurting out in another way and in another way and in another way. And realists, or people who believe that they are rational, it's a bigger subject than just a friend who seems to be out of his mind. What is at the basis of this is an innate understanding that you are free, living in a society that doesn't see you as free. And some who have very fast-moving energy just find other ways of getting around that. And these multiple personalities is often one of those ways. If you were to take any child and at an early age convince them that they were deprived of freedom, one of two things will happen. Either they will acquiesce to it or they won't. if they acquiesce to it, your society thinks they have succeeded in helping a child to conform into a behavior that is healthy. But if they are not able to get them to conform, then society claims that they have a renegade child. And we're just saying to you that at the heart of all of this dementia are renegade children, where a part of them has been forced to conform, but another part of them didn't.
That's big.
It is big. And most important, when you're looking at someone like that, now let's get to the heart of your question. What could you do to soothe? Well, understanding it helps. And taking them out of your mind, taking them out of the category of deformed, or out of the category of something wrong with them, and beginning to acknowledge them from this understanding that they have evolved to something that their belief that they learned from society wouldn't let them evolve to, and so they sort of took an end run around that. And as you know that and hold the whole of them in your perspective, you may very well be one of those satellite dishes that we were talking about earlier that beams in a signal that they can pick up on. Esther had the good fortune between college semesters one summer to work at a mental hospital. And she went there. It was in the town where her sister lived, and she was staying with her sister, and so it just seemed like a convenient job. But right away, Esther felt uncomfortable, not for the reason you might think. She was uncomfortable because the majority of people who were locked up in there were not different than the majority of the people that were not locked up out there. And in the majority of cases, she was not able to discern any reasonable reason for them being there. And what we want you to begin to do in your own mind is blur the lines between those that have been assigned the label of inappropriate or disordered in some way. Blur that line and begin to see everyone as the source within them sees them, as extensions of source, exploring contrast and giving birth to desire. And then understand that the people that have the hardest time in your environment are those people who hit the ground running, whose streams are moving really fast, who were in an environment where they were not, from their perspective, allowed to move with the speed of their stream. That is the best description that we could ever give of the person that you are talking about. And you know from your own personal experience that if your perception of your freedom is threatened, it's like having a pillow pressed to your face. You do almost anything, even irrational things. And there are a lot of people that are sort of fighting against a perceived power. And it's interesting to watch this nation as many of you are beginning to beat the drums of your fear of your eroding of freedom. And we want you to, instead of beating the drum of an erosion of freedom, instead to acknowledge, as we do, that you are all casting your vibrational votes, and that there are no laws and no rules and no enforcers of rules. There is no one who surrounds you who has the power to keep you from your freedom, because your freedom is a vibrational basis over which you have control. So the best thing that you can do for anyone is thrive. And in those extreme cases, the best thing that you can do for them is thrive and find your alignment before you hold them as your object of attention. And if you will do the very unique thing, and it will be unique, which is to see them through the eyes of Source rather than through the eyes of society, you're going to find out that you have more in common with them than you want to. Because all they are is an exaggerated version of someone whose stream is going really fast, who has chronic thought and now manifestation that keeps them from going in the direction of the stream. And if you know him well enough, tell him that you have a good friend named Abraham who is also schizophrenic. Meaning we have many perspectives that are merging. In other words, we are not one mind, we are not one thinker. We are a cumulative collection, culmination of consciousness. And you are all that yourselves. Your society does not want you to be that. Your society wants you to be static and singular and compliant. And it is not your nature.
Thank you so much.